There are many men out there who believe cheating is something loud and obvious. They expect clear warning signs like sudden coldness or dramatic behavior changes. But in real relationships, betrayal often begins quietly, hidden inside everyday conversations. That is why so many men stay confused for months, sensing something is wrong but unable to point to a clear reason. I'm Coach Janet, and I have seen this pattern repeatedly. Today, I will help you understand 3 words in women's psychology that decode subtle cheating signs that most men miss. Stay with me until the end because this will help you trust your instincts and protect your heart. If this kind of relationship advice for men speaks to you, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss future guidance. Word 1. Just. How women minimize suspicious behavior. The first word you need to pay attention to is just. On the surface, it sounds harmless and reassuring, but in female behavior decoded, this word is often used to make something questionable feel smaller than it really is. It reduces the emotional weight of a situation before you have time to think about it. When a woman says, "I was just talking to a friend," or "it was just a quick meeting," she may not be lying. However, she's framing the situation in a way that discourages further questions. This is important because people who are being fully transparent rarely feel the need to minimize details. In my coaching work, I have seen men dismiss this word repeatedly because they do not want to appear insecure. They tell themselves they're overthinking and choose silence over curiosity. Unfortunately, that silence often allows unhealthy patterns to grow unnoticed. What usually happens is gradual. At first, the word just appears occasionally and feels meaningless. Over time, it becomes attached to specific topics, specific people, or specific situations. When that happens, it's no longer random. One client noticed that every story involving male coworkers or late outings included the word just. The explanations were always calm, quick, and neatly packaged. There was no room left for follow-up questions, and that calmness gave him a false sense of reassurance. This is how emotional minimization works. The word just closes the conversation before it begins. It subtly communicates that there is nothing worth discussing, even when your instincts tell you otherwise. It's important to understand that 1 or 2 uses of this word mean nothing. What matters is repetition and context. When the same word appears consistently around sensitive topics, it becomes a behavioral pattern rather than a coincidence. Pay attention to what accompanies the word. Notice tone changes, over-explaining, or a slightly rushed response. These small signals often appear long before a cheating wife is exposed or the truth becomes undeniable. If this explanation is helping you make sense of past conversations, quietly tap the like button. It helps other men find this video and begin understanding why women cheat without jumping to conclusions. Stay with me because the next word is even more commonly used and far more revealing. Word 2. Nothing. How avoidance hides the truth. Now, let's talk about the second word many men hear daily and rarely question. The word is nothing. On its own, it sounds polite and harmless, but in women's psychology, repeated use of this word often signals avoidance rather than openness. It becomes a way to shut down curiosity without sounding defensive. When a woman responds with nothing after you ask about her day, her messages, or her mood, it may be genuine once or twice. Everyone has uneventful days. But when nothing becomes the default answer around specific times or topics, it deserves attention. Transparency usually comes with details, even small ones. As a dating coach for men, I often hear this pattern described the same way. A man says the relationship feels off, but he cannot explain why. Conversations feel shorter, answers feel flatter, and emotional access feels restricted. The word nothing quietly creates that emotional distance. One client noticed that every time he asked what his partner was doing in the evenings, the answer was nothing. There was no follow-up, no curiosity returned, and no shared energy. Over time, he felt less invited into her world, even though there was no open conflict. This is how avoidance works. Nothing becomes a conversational wall. It blocks connection without triggering an argument, which makes it easy to ignore. Many men accept it because they do not want to seem controlling or intrusive. What matters here is not the word alone, but the behavior around it. Does she avoid eye contact when she says it? Does she change the subject quickly? Does her body language close off or become tense? These details matter more than the word itself. Cheating signs rarely appear as outright lies at first. They show up as missing information, emotional withdrawal, and reduced openness. Nothing often marks the point where sharing stops and secrecy begins. If this explanation is resonating with you and confirming what you have been sensing, take a moment to like the video. It helps this message reach men who are questioning their instincts in silence. And if this video is validating your experience, drop the word confirmed in the comments so I know you are following along. One important reminder here is not to jump to accusations. Awareness is not the same as confrontation. The goal is to observe patterns calmly, not to force answers prematurely. Men who protect themselves emotionally learn to watch first and react later. A cheating wife or emotionally involved partner often becomes skilled at saying very little while sounding normal. Nothing keeps the peace while hiding emotional shifts underneath. That's why men feel uneasy without having proof. Pay attention to frequency and timing. If nothing appears most when you ask about specific people, late hours, or phone use, that's meaningful. Patterns always form before truths come out. Stay with me because the third word is often the one that ties everything together. When this word appears alongside the first two, the picture becomes much clearer. And remember to like this video. Word 3. Friend. When innocence starts carrying emotional weight. The third word you need to pay close attention to is friend. On the surface, this word feels completely normal. Everyone has friends, and healthy relationships allow space for social connections. But in women's psychology, context determines meaning, not the word itself. Problems arise when a friend appears suddenly and becomes emotionally significant very quickly. You may notice her tone soften when she mentions him, or her mood lift in ways it no longer does with you. The word stays the same, but the emotional energy around it changes. As a dating coach for men, I often hear stories where a man sensed something was off but dismissed it because the label was harmless. She said friend, so he told himself there was nothing to worry about. What he ignored was secrecy, defensiveness, or a lack of clarity when he asked simple questions. One client described how his partner mentioned a male friend often, but never explained how they met or what they talked about. When she spoke about him, she smiled differently and became protective of her phone. Over time, emotional intimacy shifted away from the relationship and toward this friend. This is how emotional cheating often begins. It does not start with physical betrayal, but with emotional investment. The word friend becomes a safe label that hides growing closeness. It is important to understand that having friends is not the issue. The issue is emotional imbalance. When a partner becomes emotionally energized by someone else while growing distant with you, that shift matters. Pay attention to behavior changes around the word. Does she suddenly guard details? Does she avoid mentioning the friend unless prompted? Does she become irritated when you ask reasonable questions? These are not coincidences. Female behavior decoded always shows itself through consistency. When friend appears alongside just and nothing, a pattern forms. One minimizes, one avoids, and one redirects emotional focus. Another man I coached noticed all three words showing up regularly. She used just when explaining interactions, nothing when asked about her day, and friend when referencing new connections. Instead of confronting her immediately, he observed quietly and trusted his instincts. Weeks later, the truth came out. She had been emotionally involved with someone else long before anything physical happened. What saved him months of confusion was awareness, not confrontation. This is why I emphasize patterns over isolated incidents. One word does not mean betrayal. Repeated behaviors over time tell a story words alone never will. Many men fear that noticing these signs makes them controlling or insecure. In reality, awareness is emotional maturity. Protecting your heart does not require accusations, it requires attention. Cheating signs often appear long before the relationship collapses. They show up as emotional distance, guarded communication, and subtle language shifts. When words and behavior stop matching, intuition speaks. If you are noticing these patterns, trust yourself. Do not gaslight your own instincts. Men often sense the truth before they can explain it. The goal is not to police your partner. The goal is to stay grounded in reality. When transparency fades, clarity becomes your responsibility. Now you understand why the words just, nothing, and friend matter. Not because of what they mean individually, but because of how they repeat, cluster, and align with behavior. Awareness is not paranoia, it is self-respect. If this video helped you see your situation more clearly, subscribe and share it with someone who may need it. Drop your experience in the comments if any of this felt familiar. Your story may help another man stop doubting himself. Stay aware, stay calm, and remember, your heart and time are worth protecting.